This video is sponsored by Hisense, the makers of quality HD TVs. For this review, I watched the movie on a U7G 4K ULED smart Android TV, and it looked great. I was really impressed by how sharp the picture was. The TV uses quantum dot technology, which brings an element of realism and beautiful picture quality, unlocking the power of more than 1 billion color combinations. So scenes pop with the impact of lifelike color. For your components, like a Blu-ray player, the TV has ultra-high-speed HDMIs, which increase the TV's bandwidth to support higher resolutions, faster refresh rates, and enhanced audio features. It's also great for gaming. It runs at a native 120 Hz for smooth clarity and motion that gives fast-acting gaming, sports, and movies exceptional detail. Now that streaming services like HBO Max are offering all these movies at home as well as in theaters, why wouldn't you want the best experience for your home theater? Check out the link below the video if you want to know more about the Hisense U7G 4K ULED Smart Android TV. Malignant. Wow, where to begin with this one? The movie's about a woman who's plagued by dreams of people being brutally killed by a trench coat wearing monster. She of course discovers that her dreams are in fact real. I'm kinda torn on the movie. I didn't hate it, but I didn't exactly like it either. I'm gonna get into some minor spoilers, so don't listen if you don't want to hear. The beginning starts off in a research hospital in 1993, the super creepy, huge kind of hospital that sits off the side of a cliff. Nothing good ever happens in one of these. There's a monster inside that's trying to get loose and is killing everyone. It was a really weird way to start the film off because the acting in the opening portion is just atrocious. Herder, he was like drinking electricity. He's broadcasting his thoughts. So bad. The opening song after that is When Your Walls Fall by Cell Dweller, which is a killer tune, but it sets you up to think this movie's gonna be serious. And once things kick in, I started questioning, is this supposed to be a comedy? I went in blind, so I didn't know anything about the film. At first, I was worried it was going to be found footage since the doctor was talking to the camera, but that thankfully switched. After the opening section at the hospital, it switches to the main character, Madison. She's pregnant and dealing with an abusive husband. After an incident where the husband lashes out, a monster straight out of a J-horror film pretty much rips the guy's head off. Madison then tries to figure out what's going on with her, so she gets the police involved. One wants to help her, and the other one wants to crack jokes. That's one of my problems with this. The movie feels like it was pulled from a bunch of different sources. Like, they wanted to make an homage to horror films, but couldn't decide which ones, so they just threw a bunch of them together and called it a day. After watching the movie, I read a little bit about it, and it turns out James Wan was trying to make this an homage to 80s films. The biggest one, I'm guessing, being Frank Henenlotter's Basket Case. I've been a fan of James Wan ever since his breakout first film, Saw. That movie was gritty, vicious, and very unique. This one felt too polished, and it lacked the grit of his earlier films like Saw, Dead Silence, and Death Sentence. If anything, it felt like Wan was trying to do something that would have been better suited to early 1980s Sam Raimi. Raimi is one of those rare directors that knows how to balance camp with scares. I'd say after The Conjuring, which I did like, his stuff started to get a little too polished. It felt more Fast and Furious and less Saw. The polish worked fine for something like Aquaman, but not really for this kind of movie. The biggest problem of them all, though, is the tone. This may be the most tonally inconsistent film I've seen in a long time. I don't mind films with tonal shifts, something like Behind the Mask, where it starts off fairly lighthearted, but gets brutal towards the end. This just flips back and forth all willy-nilly. It goes from dead serious to goofy in seconds. It's like they couldn't make up their minds. I'm all for gallows humor, but this had jokes that weren't even funny, that cut the tension that wasn't there. Then comes the end of the movie where it turns into, and I'm not kidding, The Matrix. The only thing missing was the bullet time. The monster goes on a rampage in a police station that is quite possibly one of the most unintentionally funny things I've seen this year. Or maybe it was intentional, who knows? With the way the movie was structured, I couldn't tell if I was supposed to be laughing with the movie or at it. Although the chair throw was definitely put there for laughs, it had to be. I will give credit where credit's due, though. I did not expect the way this portion of the film played out. It's rare that something can surprise me, and this genuinely did. I did like that the violence was very R-rated. Lots of compound fractures and some cool deaths. A decent amount of practical effects, but still the ever-present CG blood splatter that current movies just can't seem to avoid. Also, while the movie was almost 2 hours long, it didn't feel like it. I know some folks said they were bored, but as weird as it was, it never lost my attention. Completely on another tangent, why did Madison's sister park so close to the edge of the cliff? That was probably the only point in the movie where I was genuinely nervous. Madison switching from our world into Gabriel's world kind of reminded me of what they did in the Silent Hill movie and Silent Hill Homecoming. There was also a song in the movie that sounded a lot like a remixed version of Where's My Mind by the Pixies. I couldn't find it on the soundtrack listing, and I didn't have time to go back and rewatch the film just to find it. If you know the song, you'll hear it. I think if they went one way or the other, the movie would have worked better. If they either went full satire homage or stayed dead serious. Instead, it sits in the middle, and consequently, it just feels weird the entire movie. I know James Wan co-wrote this, but I really feel that it's something that could have been handled better by another director. Not saying he's a bad director at all. I like most of his work, but here, strangely enough, it was too clean. There were some stylish shots, like an extended overhead of Madison running through the house, that were impressive, but all it did was take me out of the movie. I was admiring how cool it looked instead of focusing on what I was supposed to be focused on, being scared. There were these little oddities too, like the one crime scene investigator who was fawning over Officer Kiko. There's somebody over there who has their face bashed in, and she's making puppy dog eyes at the cop. Again, it skews the whole tone of the scene. On a side note, I discovered the actress is James Wan's real wife. I also liked seeing Paula Marshall in there, although in a very small role. Malignant is not the movie I was expecting, and while that usually can be good, in this case, it wasn't. I was expecting something a bit closer to James Wan's roots, and instead, got this really oddball film where a woman with half her brain sticking out executes an entire police station while walking backwards. I like that the director was trying something a little off-center from his usual wheelhouse, but it just didn't work. I will say I'd rather have a movie that ends up a failed experiment rather than a bland cookie-cutter remake. So while this may not have been a particularly good film, it's weird enough that it'll certainly have its fans, and definitely you'll get people talking. Knowing how the movie is, I think I'll revisit it a few months down the road. Maybe it'll work for me a second time if I look at it as a comedy. Otherwise, it's just a horror movie that keeps forgetting it's a horror movie.